Meet Seth. He's a cougar. No, not a real cougar. He's a member of the Cougar Democracy Squad, a group he formed with his friends. Here they are now. There's Nathan, the idea man, Michael, the organizational whiz, and Sarah, the taskmaster. Someone has to keep those boys in order. And don't forget about Mike, still recovering from that awful bear attack. Together they formed what is called a Civic Action Team, a small, close-knit group of individuals working towards a common goal. In this case, the goal is to write an activist toolkit that they can hand out at the annual Democracy Fest. Time to get crackin', boys! But how did Seth and his friends come up with the idea for Civic Action Teams? Let's take a closer look. In 2004, Seth and his friends worked hard to defeat President Bush and the GOP in the elections, and they were not alone. Across the country, millions of like-minded Americans, just like you, came together in an effort to create a better country for us all. In the end, they came close, but it simply wasn't enough. Bush was re-elected. Seth and his friends were flabbergasted. What could they do now? Top-down monopolistic empires have been beaten before, but how? Clearly, they needed a new approach. So, back to the drawing board. They admired the organizational power of the right wing and noticed that much of it was built on small, church-based organizing. During the elections, they had seen firsthand the power of larger, meetup-based organizing used by Democrats and progressives, but the smaller, more personal structures used by their rivals were missing. They were also inspired by the struggles of people in far worse predicaments: the French resistance during World War II, the nonviolent democratic revolutions in Eastern Europe. From Poland in the 1980s to Ukraine in 2004, and the anti-nuclear movements here in the US more than 20 years ago, many of these movements were organized around small teams, or cells, acting independently towards shared goals. Maybe a formal structure for small group organizing could be a useful tool for progressive activists in the US. And maybe the 5 of them could form such a group with the specific goal of creating an organizing model and documenting that model with a short manual. And that's exactly what they did. But that's enough about the Cougars. Let's talk about the model they created, the Civic Action Network. We'll call it the CAT-CAN model to make it easier to remember and more fun to say. Our vision is building a nationwide civic action network of small, self-contained groups called Civic Action Teams. Civic Action Teams? What's that? A civic action team is a small group of activists who commit to each other that they will work together to accomplish a single specific goal in a finite period of time. Civic action teams are a good way to organize members of larger organizations, such as political campaign volunteers, community organizations, advocacy groups, fundraising committees, media observers, educational campaigns, and many more. A group of 100 campaign volunteers, organized into 20 self-directed groups of 5 people each, will accomplish far more than a group of 100 with a single leader using a top-down model. Using the CAT-CAN model, the campaign manager can set the overall goals for the campaign's volunteers without having to personally direct the activities of each volunteer. And volunteers don't have to sit around waiting on instructions from campaign higher-ups. Why are small groups more effective? Small groups are more accountable. They create stronger social bonds, which will really help when things get stressful. And they're more democratic. You can build a stronger consensus. They're more creative and flexible, which leads to more innovation. And innovation is good, folks. They have better internal communication. They have quicker reaction times. And this may sound a little crazy, but small groups of people who know and trust each other are a lot harder for enemy agents to infiltrate and sabotage from within. And in these paranoid times, well, that's important. Now that we've sold you on the benefits of the CAT-CAN model, let's talk theory. Put on your berets, everybody. The Civic Action Team Theory of Change. Some smart guy once said, "There is nothing inherently real or true about any social form." I bet he was French. And the only limit to our ability to create new and better types of organizations is limited only by our imagination and collective will. We've studied the experts and we agree, but with a twist. We think it's going to take a lot of small, well-organized groups to effect real, large-scale, lasting change for the better. Some people call that the snowball effect. How do we start those little snowballs rolling down the hill? Well, a civic action team has a 3-stage life cycle: formation, action, reflection. Formation is the stage where the group comes together, bonds, and builds consensus on goals and expectations. When you're forming your civic action team, some of the main things to watch out for are setting your goal. A fundamental principle of the CAT-CAN approach is to look for fights you can win in the near term, be it identifying progressive voters in your local precinct, getting a petition initiative on the ballot, or writing a short guidebook on how to organize civic action teams. Selecting group members. Be on the lookout for people who will take the commitment seriously. Try to find people whose talents and temperaments complement each other. And we recommend building a group of friendly acquaintances, rather than close friends. It'll really help if everyone is trying to impress each other with their hard work and accomplishments. Forming an identity. A little group spirit can go a long way. It may sound a little corny, but we think taking the time to create a secret handshake, a mascot, or matching patches can pay off by creating a tighter bond among your group. Taking the oath. Commitment is what a civic action team is all about. Each team should take 2 oaths, the first being an oath to uphold the broader mission of the Civic Action Network. As a citizen of the United States and the world, I pledge to be connected by strengthening and widening my personal and social networks, conscious by regularly monitoring both corporate and alternative news sources, and committed to community service. The second oath should be developed by your team and articulate a commitment to work towards a specific near-term goal of your group. The initial oath of the Cougar Democracy Squad was, "We pledge to work together to write an organizing manual for the Civic Action Network model for Democracy Fest 2005. Action is the part in the middle, when everybody bears down and gets to work. Noted organizer Elvis Presley used to call this TCB, taking care of business. So let's TCB, everybody. The action phase involves 3 key stages: planning, acting, and evaluating. The planning phase is when you select the tactics you will use to achieve your strategic goal. Set a timeline to accomplishment, and answer the questions who, what, when, where, why, and how. As you go, you'll want to evaluate what's working and what's not. This may sound obvious, but if something's working, stick with it. If it's not, change your approach. Reflection is the phase after you've met your goal, or realize it's time to regroup and rethink your approach. During the reflection stage, the group steps back to reevaluate its activities and decide how to proceed from there. Ask yourself these questions. Are you making headway towards your immediate goal? Is the group working to the best of its abilities? What changes need to be made to improve progress? Although it sometimes seemed like an impossible goal, Seth and his friends have finished writing their organizing manual. Now it's up to you, and the people hearing this message, to form their own civic action teams, help build the Civic Action Network, and prove that this cat can.